Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here, Golden Opportunities Coaching, and it is the 17th of April, 2020. Welcome to those of you who are joining us on another day. Welcome to those of you who are new here because of the advertising we're doing. This is a channel where we give coaching tips, techniques, and valuable stuff to anybody who wants it for free. Also, if you want to work with me, I'll give you information later in this audio recording on how to do that. But please like and subscribe. And one of the questions I want to ask, if we're going to deal with toxic parenting today, is what's the most toxic thing your parent has ever done? Please comment below, and we'll all support each other. So toxic parenthood is a big topic. I had a client yesterday who had a major breakthrough, and I'm really proud of them. And they know who they are, and they're probably listening right now because they asked me to make this audio. But anyway, if they are listening, congratulations on having the breakthrough you had yesterday. If they're not listening yet, at least you got here. You're late to the party, but that's okay. What is toxic parenthood? Toxic parenthood is a form of parenthood where the parent uses their own internal wounding, emotional wounding, and takes it out upon their children in various ways. And what causes toxic parenthood? Well, there's a number of things. The pressures of parenthood now versus, let's say, 50, 60 years ago, extremely different. We see more single parents than ever before. We see financial crises. Over, a quarter to a third of the country is in poverty right now in one form or another. We're living paycheck to paycheck. I forget the numbers, but something like 60% couldn't handle a $500 or more emergency. So the financial constrictions have a lot to do with it. The rise in use of opioids, other drugs, alcohol, and other substances to cope with negative emotions has a rise in it. Parents who came from toxic homes, really toxic parenting homes really was a thing that started in the late 70s, early 80s, and has beget itself since then. So we're talking about kind of the second generation, perhaps the beginning of the third, of toxic parenthood. And so there's a few things that we can look at and say, hey, my parent's probably toxic if I'm experiencing these things. Now, I remind you, please, if you're dealing with this or you're trying to deal with this alone, obviously I work with people 18 and over. I will work with minors with written parental consent, but that's dicey because usually if there's a toxic parent involvement, it means that one parent is a custodial parent, the other parent is absent, and I do require to work with a minor that both parents be on board because I don't think it's fair, not knowing the whole story, to side with one parent over the other. In any event, there's about 6 to 7 things that we can watch for and pretty well be pretty sure that there's toxic parenting going on if some of these things are evident, and we'll go through those today. And if you're dealing with that, please feel free to reach out to me or someone else. Just dealing with it alone is really, really dangerous because it can negatively affect your emotional patterns and actually change the synapse and function of your brain if you're trying to deal with it too long by yourself, because a lot of times we'll fixate on the core values of the abuse or the neglect or the hardship, and we wonder why, and repeatedly doing that without interruption, which is common for abuse survivors to do, can actually lead to changes in brain chemistry and all sorts of other ugly things. So what are the signs here? Control mechanisms. So a toxic parent is going to want control over everything you do. They're going to want to know when you're coming, when you're going. They want to know what you wear. They want to know who your friends are. They want to know what you talked about. They want to know if you said anything bad about them. They want to know where you are in the house. They want to know when you're leaving, when you're coming back, there's an abundance of they need to micromanage every area of your life. And usually this boils down to one of two issues. One, the parent feels they have no control over their own life, therefore they have felt the right to control yours as a result of your birth. In other words, I gave birth to you, therefore I have this right. Or the opposite, which is it was done to them. They were controlled and manipulated. And so They learned that it was a carrying behavior, never unlearned the behavior, then had children of their own, and are just carrying out a cross-generational coalition of negative behavior. Another option is that the control is coming from a place of pressure from others. This especially happens when there's multi-generations living in the same home. So if you're living with grandma or grandpa and mom or dad or both, and you suddenly see a change in your parents, there's a very good chance that the change you're seeing is as a result of their own issues with trying to please their now aging parent through how they handle the child. So these are the main three things that cause control mechanism in parenthood. All right, the second one is blaming. A toxic parent will blame their child for everything because somewhere along their development, usually these are younger parents who probably had their children very, very young, teenager to early 20s before 25, or the child may be the product of a sexual assault, the child may be the product of a broken relationship or one that was founded upon addiction. But basically, for the blame game to be a major factor, the parent has to feel that life got significantly worse upon the birth of the child or the conception of the child. This happens many times when there are moms who are in love with or infatuated with the man who is the biological father of the child, and then he decides he wants nothing to do with the child, which then causes the breakup of the relationship. The mother will, in fact, hang on to the negativity and resentment for the child many times without even realizing it. In other words, they're holding on to it subconsciously. Of course, I'm of the personal opinion that if either parent is incapable or does not want to parent, it is better to have one parent walk away. Unfortunately, the Western court system doesn't agree, and quite often we have situations where children are fought over both financially, economically, emotionally, and what have you, thus creating negative psychological and emotional experiences and experiences of negative emotional development for the child. I raise that because part of the blame game can also be, I have to see your father, your mother, because of you in order to keep a court order. That can be another version of the blame game, is the guilt of having to deal with the other non-custodial parent because of the existence of the child. This can also manifest in terms of what other friends or other family members say about the parent's raising of the child, and therefore, if there's any criticism whatsoever, it is harshly and very aggressively passed on to the child as if it's the child's fault. The parent can always find a way to blame the child for something, because the core belief of the toxic parent is if the child did not exist, then their problems would not exist either. So there's a direct correlation between problem and child being co-connected. Another factor, too, and this is really difficult, but our society doesn't allow parents who are not ready to be parents to openly say, I'm not good at this, I can't do this, let's step away from being a parent. Now, you're going to say, but there's adoption and there's abortion. Yes. However, that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the parent has chosen, for whatever reason, to keep the child physically, but they feel as though this was a bad mistake. Our society does not allow parents who are in over their heads when it comes to parenting to talk openly, a la get assistance from a social service organization en masse, or to get assistance from a nonprofit organization in terms of terminating their own parental rights when they realize, hey, this is making me hate this kid, this is making me hate my life, this is affecting my mental health, I don't want to do this anymore. Not that kids should be given with mulligans, but at the same time, there is a segment of the population, and I was raised by two of them, that are incapable of being loving parents. They don't have the emotional capacity. When we as a society make a parent be a parent just because of biology, we're basically guaranteeing a couple of things. We're guaranteeing that that parent is going to go into negative behavior to cope, and we're also guaranteeing that the child is going to fall victim to abuse because the parent doesn't feel they have any way out of the situation. Just something to consider before choosing to have a child with someone is simply, could I handle this child if the other person at some point realizes this isn't for them? And that goes for both parents, not just women. And I think our society does a lot of damage in expecting women to be the primary decision makers when it comes to the needs of a child. Obviously, the her body, her choice movement is out there. But at the same time, men have to think, too, hey, I liked sleeping with you. Do I really want to deal with you for the next 18 years as a result of having a child with you? If not, that can make me bitter. It can affect how I relate to other people. It can affect how I relate to the child and all sorts of other things. In any event, it is imperative that if the blame game continues, the young person finds a way to stand up for themselves, but normally this doesn't happen until the angst and anger of teenage years comes along. And by that point, negative consequences and behavioral patterns have already set in. So another thing that toxic parents will do is second guess your positive progress. So this will sound like if you go and you write a paper and you've gotten a B+ on the paper. They'll say, oh, you should have had an A. Or they'll say, why didn't you try harder? Or they'll say, do you really think that's your best work? In other words, it's almost a form of gaslighting where the parent will second guess any progress you make that's positive. You make a new friend, and the parent will say something like, are you sure they really like you for you and they're not just attracted to you? You decide to get an after-school job. Are you sure that you can handle an after-school job and your homework and all of this? Now, on the surface, those questions aren't always negative. However, when the first thing a parent does is to question the validity of a decision or the validity of a choice or the validity of a course of action without giving any chance for support, encouragement, wisdom sharing, just creating a space for talking and sharing in general, then it becomes toxic parenting because the progress is always the first thing questioned. Therefore, the child begins to realize, hey, mom or dad doesn't think I can make my own decisions. Can I really? And then that creates self-esteem issues, and it creates self-loathing, and it also creates the desire to please the parent, which can manifest later in life into overgiving in romantic relationships, and it's a bugger to break the cycle of. The next thing that is very common in toxic parenting is mood swings. So toxic parents have this internal battle, and the battle is, I hate the fact that I have this child, but I want people to think I'm a good parent. So they will put on airs as though they're happy in public places. They will even be kind or heap praise sometimes in rare cases upon the child. And then immediately when you're not in public anymore, there'll be a laundry list of things you didn't do or should have done or could have done or shouldn't have done, as if the positive experiences in the experience never took place. This mind-splitting, mind-altering experience can be extremely damaging for children because, especially young ones between, let's say, 6 and 12, when they're beginning to learn the foundation of actions and consequences and all of these things. Because if you're getting mixed messages during the foundation of the fundamentals of right and wrong and or progress and dissolution, progress and destruction, then one begins to look and go, wait a minute, if I can't make the right decision, if they flip on me like this, who else is going to flip on me? And I'm never going to know if I'm 100% right with the choices I'm making. I'm never going to be good enough. And that's where self-esteem issues really begin. The flip-flopping of, you did well, no, you didn't. You know, the difference between behind closed doors and in front of people is a really big thing. For the longest time, and I can just share in my own experience, the only time that my physically, mentally, emotionally, and sexually abusive parents were kind to me at all is when we were in public places. And so it was very confusing because I knew if I needed a break, I tried to convince them to take me somewhere because I could, for a minute, know they weren't going to be harsh. But at the same time, the minute that door closed, whack, and it was off to the races again and having to defend oneself. In any event, another harsh reality is harsh words. Parents who are toxic are hypercritical. They are going to find everything wrong, and they actually believe, some of them anyway, not all of them, some of them believe that they're actually protecting you from the harsh realities of the world. These are individuals who suffer with severe anxiety and depression themselves, and they actually believe that by being tougher on you than average or than you can handle, they are preparing you for real life and adulthood and a life full of pure realism. This can manifest in terms of speaking harshly. This can manifest in terms of calling names and vulgarities. This can also manifest in terms of covert or overt humiliation in front of friends, potential dating partners, and the like. As the words cut down and as a history begins, they're also trying to metaphorically and sometimes literally beat out of you the desire to be seen or heard, so that you remain silent, so that you become more easy to control and more docile in the end. Obviously, the last of these, and it goes without saying, any form of abuse, mental, physical, emotional, sexual, financial, etc., if your parent is abusive, it's because they're toxic, they don't have an outlet for their own anger, and so they take it out on something that either A, can't fight back, or B, they don't feel they'll ever caught doing. Many times, abusive parents will, in fact, up the ante as far as physical abuse or isolation in an effort because they're exhausted of taking care of a child, and thus, in some weird way, there's a self-saboteur factor going on where the parent really wants to get caught, but they don't want to go to jail, but they don't want to deal with the child anymore. Several years ago, I believe it was the state of Wisconsin or Montana, there was a safe haven law that applied to children who were of any age, under 18. And I probably should have looked this up before I started recording, but oh well, if you wanted to look it up, just look up child safe haven law. And there was a state where children that were, beyond infant age were allowed to be dropped off for a while at hospitals and other drop-off locations, police stations, fire stations, etc., and so forth. So, anyhow, there was a bunch of parents, probably about 3 or 4 dozen, who decided to drop off their preteens and teenagers. They didn't want to do this anymore. And in that state, at least for a little while, it was legal. Well, it turns out that the state didn't want to deal with this, the foster system wasn't prepared for this, and they rescinded the law. Well, come to find out, the psychological aspect upon those young people is even worse. Now they've been told twice they're not ready. The state doesn't want them, so they rescinded the law. The parents don't want them, so they tried to give them away. And as you can imagine, when I talked to someone who's been through something similar to this, as you can imagine, that is a heck of a mind duck to get away from, because you really have nowhere to turn. In any event, this has been Scott Golden with Golden Opportunities Coaching. If you would like coaching on toxic parenting or any other emotional challenges, please feel free to give me either a direct message here on YouTube or contact me on Twitter at @POPerception. We are aware that our microphone has some sound issues. We are working on that. A personal assistant is going to be getting a new microphone for me within about a week or so, hopefully, if the shipping holds out with the COVID virus and everything there. So hopefully sound will improve over the next week. But I want to get these audios up because I do believe, especially during the time of this pandemic, people need encouragement, and I want to be there for that. So contact me on Twitter at @POPerception. Contact me here on YouTube. And we are running the Reconnection, the inclusion sale. Anybody who contacts through YouTube and purchases services is held at a $50 lifetime per session rate. That is a deep, deep discount. But that we're running that sale for anyone through the end of the pandemic. So once President Trump says, hey, everybody go back to work, the sale will no longer be run. But until then, you will qualify for that discounted rate. So certainly worth reaching out, either here or on Twitter. In any event, this has been Scott Golden. Keep your feet on the ground, your mind in a moment. Until next time, everybody.